What's going on, everybody? Welcome to The Dime. Today, we have a very special guest, one of my favorite Twitter personalities. Met him on Hoop Spaces. He's doing his own thing, streams for Bleacher Report now. So give it up for Gifted Hoops, ladies and gentlemen. Gifted, thank you for coming on once again. How you been, man?
Been good, man. First off, I want to say appreciate the invite again on the platform. Big shout out. A lot of how I grew to become a better content creator was through your tips and your advice. So always happy to be here, man. What's good?
Yeah, man, I appreciate that as well. If anybody wants to follow Gifted, you can at GiftedHoops_. He streams live. Tell everybody about your channel and all that stuff so they can catch you.
Absolutely. So I make content on YouTube that follows the NBA. I also live stream these conversations on playback.tv/GiftedHoops, and also everything else Gifted on Twitch, YouTube, and all that Gifted Hoops, and on Twitter. So
nice. There we go. All right, Gifted. You're a fan of the Warriors. You're an expert on the Warriors. You're probably, and this is a huge compliment, you're probably the most objective Warrior fan that I know. I mean, Warriors Twitter is like insane. You guys are freaking crazy. I don't know how you handle that. I don't know how you deal with that, but you deal with it pretty well. You're a very rational voice. But Kwab and I pulled out 3 tweets that I want to share with you, and I want to get your reactions to those tweets. Sure. Let me know if you agree with them, whatnot, all that good stuff. So tweet number 1 comes from Jabbar at @hightop_fade, and he says, y'all forget all those games Kerr cost us by not playing Kuminga and Trayce early. All those Corey Joseph games, Wiggins leaving, Draymond being suspended. Our record could have been way different, and we got better. Trust in Steph. Do you agree with the fact that Kerr cost the Warriors pretty much most of the season last year?
So I said this coming in, right? I said that this roster, based on us trading Jordan Poole for Chris Paul and attaching a pick to make that happen, would have to be based on the younger players taking a leap. Kerr did not extend the opportunity for that to happen until later into the season, which at that point, we had already lost so many crunch time close games, it really wasn't a needle mover anymore. So I would say that Kerr definitely deserves some blame for that. I also feel like the roster itself wasn't strong enough to really be a true contender. But if Kerr had made the simple rotations to not have Corey Joseph, a player that was not in the NBA anymore, he got waived and we had to attach money to make the team take his contract or whatever, we would be a much better team. There's no reason why you have Moses Moody as a DNP for a lot of the season, but then you can play him versus a team like the Knicks. He can lock up Jalen Brunson. There's just a lot of things that Kerr did not do well with this strategy in terms of rotations. The fact that Kuminga had to go to Shams to ask for more minutes is crazy. And then immediately starts hooping once he gets those minutes. It's kind of wild.
And also, by the way, as a Knicks fan, I tweeted out that game. I've never seen anybody, last year, I don't know if I saw anybody guard Jalen Brunson better than Moses Moody did last year at the Garden. That was one of the better defensive performances I've seen on Jalen Brunson all year.
Next game, DNP.
Next game. Like, did it feel like?
Where are you? Are you on like the fire Steve Kerr bandwagon? Because Steve Kerr gets so much hate, like ungodly amount of hate on Twitter. Where are you on that?
So like, it's weird because again, I try to stay in between. I feel like every fan of their team wants to fire their head coach. I'm kind of not there with Kerr, but I do feel like he had a very trying regular season. I think that Kerr was very instrumental in developing the system that gave them a ton of success. My problem is now that we're 5 years removed from that, now it's like, okay, where are the adjustments? Where are the shifts in your system to make things better? I think Kerr is a good coach, but not making those changes quicker enough is a part of his flaw. He really lives and dies with his rotations, and those are problems. At the same time, though, I can't think of a coach who I could put in to really understand the flow and navigate the personalities of this core than Steve Kerr. So it's kind of a poison that I'll just have to take.
Did it feel like the last season was like the most dysfunctional season yet under Steve Kerr?
Oh, that is a great question. The most dysfunctional season. Honestly, no. I think the KD year with Draymond was probably a bit more dysfunctional. We were just so good it didn't matter. Yeah. But I think that year was a bit more because it's like Draymond and KD had their thing going on. There were a lot of heavy personalities to manage. Last season was just wild, but for all the wrong reasons. Draymond played a huge role in that, obviously, but we'll get to that pretty soon, I imagine.
Oh, yeah, we absolutely
Yeah.
will. All right. Second tweet comes from SJ at SJ Basketball 8. She says, not going to lie, I hate seeing longtime franchise players leave their teams to go somewhere else. I know Klay came to my team, but him leaving the Warriors is still so weird to me. I feel like once you hit the 13-year mark, you and that team got to work out whatever issues you have. Gifted, would you have wanted to keep Klay and wanted him to work out whatever issues he had with Golden State?
See, okay, I feel like I'm a different fan, and people are going to call me things because of this, but I really didn't mind Klay leaving. I wanted him to stay. That would have been, optimal, but I understand that at the age of his career on this team, athletically, he's still not the same. As a shooter, he still provides a ton of value, but now his overall variance as a player really impacts the entire team. I wanted him to stay, of course, but if it couldn't happen, it wasn't going to be a thing that dramatically made me lose sleep. And maybe that's because I acknowledge what he gave us, right? I acknowledge how important he was to all of our championships, but I know how to separate that from 2025. So I'm a bit in the middle.
Going to be in the middle.
Yeah.
I think it was time. Just my personal opinion. Someone from the outside, I think it was time to let go. I mean, he looked older. He looked slower. He's not the defensive player he used to be. A lot of the Warriors championship teams, I mean, all of them really were predicated on defense on the perimeter and being able. Yeah. So, I mean, he's just not the same player anymore. And then to be honest with you, like his shot selection to me has always been trash. He's just always been a good enough shooter to get away with it. And he just wasn't hitting the same shots that he was hitting in the past, thinking that he's the same player. So to me, I think it's the right time to move on from him. I understand like the sentiment of this tweet, wanting to keep, the players around who you drafted and you want them to retire a Warrior, but that's not what this business is anymore. And I think it was time for the Warriors to move on. Kwab, you have any ideas or anything to say about that?
I was going to just say, like, it's just going to look weird with him in the Mavs uniform. Like,
it is going to be weird. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember I saw somebody put up a Photoshop of it, and I was just like, it doesn't look right. It doesn't look right.
His number's 31. It looks crazy.
It looks crazy. Thank you. That's what I was going to say. The number looks crazy on top of that. And I agree with both of your sentiments. It's just, I'm kind of with you, Gifted, in the middle, where I was like, if he left, cool. If he stayed, cool. Like, I wish they would have worked it out just because of the whole cultural standpoint of like the Splash Brothers, and not having that anymore feels like it's like a weird loss in the NBA because it's been a big part of the NBA, regardless of how like much Klay has regressed because of injuries. It just felt like that was still a staple. Like the Splash Brothers was always a staple in the NBA, so missing that is going to be weird. But again, I'm waiting for the first Mavs game because I'm gonna look at it and just be like,
I'll be locked in for sure.
Right?
Yeah. I think the Mavs are not a bad team for Klay either because there's gonna be less movement he has to do, and they have 2-star players who can actually put rim pressure at the basket, not just Steph Curry. So his look should be easier, you would think.
Now I got a quick question though about that.
Sure.
Last year, it felt like Klay was like taking shots where he felt like I have to get some shots up because I don't know when my next shot's gonna come. Like it felt like he was taking some like you said, some bad shots where you're like, dog, you don't need to shoot that right there. On the Mavs, how is it gonna feel when like he goes through, because there's stretches where like Luka's gonna Luka. Yeah, I mean, like, not saying like they have great passers in Luka and Kyrie, but sometimes you're not gonna see the ball. And Klay has always felt like the type of shooter where like sometimes he gets antsy when he doesn't get his shots, he needs to get some shots up. How is that gonna look on the Mavs if that happens?
This is funny because I did a podcast with my guys from the Mavericks Outsiders, by the way, right? We talked about this, and I think what it comes down to is that for the Mavericks, based off who they gave up to get Klay Thompson back, Klay Thompson is the Michael Jordan version of Tim Hardaway. So it's like if he's getting 15 shots, 18 shots a game for the Mavericks, they find that acceptable because of how good of a shooter he is. My biggest thing with Klay is his confidence can wane if he gets pulled early. And Kerr, more than any other season, was pulling him even at times where it wasn't fair to Klay, where, hey, it's a 10-point game. If you put Klay and Steph in instead of this all defense lineup, maybe they can cut into the lead. Instead, we get blown out by 30, right? Like, those are the moments where you kind of have to trust Klay to turn up. And I think the Mavericks can afford to do it more because, again, they have 2-star players who could put pressure on the defense more consistently. Now, defensively, is he going to close every night, every matchup? I can't confirm that. I just can't.
Quentin Grimes, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Just saying. But we're not talking mess here. We're not talking mess.
Right.
All right.
It's all good.
All right. Last tweet comes from Odin's father at SmoothReg21. And he says, Steph's going for the MVP this year, putting the Warriors on his back, coming back to this tweet when the season's over. Gifted, does Steph have another MVP season in him?
Oh, man. I don't know how to tell that, man. No, he's not. I want to be clear, right? I'm a humongous Steph fan. I think Steph's going to have a very productive season. I think he's going to be an all-NBA player. But to get the MVP, you're talking about this Warriors team having to be a top 4 team. And again, I would love to be wrong. Yeah. Please prove me wrong. But he would have to play at such an insane level where he's better than Jokic, Joel Embiid, and then games played on top of it for an entire regular season. And I just don't think in the Western Conference, with how lacking this roster is, like, the second best offensive player, the second leading scorer on this team might be Jonathan Kuminga. So, like, I just don't see it personally. If he does, that would be outstanding. That would be super duper phenomenal. But I just want him to have a good all NBA season, and hopefully they can win some games. But putting him in MVP talks is basically saying you expect him to go out here and average like 35 a game on 50, 40, 90 splits. I just don't see that.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the roster. Speaking of that, would you have pulled the trigger on the marketing deal? Is that something you would have done?
Yes. I have been writing for Lauri Markkanen for like 2 years now, because to me, he's like the second best off-ball player in the league. He doesn't dominate the ball at all with his overall touches. His shooting is elite. And more importantly, he's not a 6'1" guard that's joined the Warriors yet again. He actually has size and can play with Draymond. Yeah. So to me, he would have fit perfectly, because the biggest flaw is they don't have a reliable secondary scoring option. If you have to trade one of your younger guys to get him, I would do it. I also don't think if you're Golden State, you offer Moses Moody, the guy that you routinely have had in the doghouse, where you played Anthony Lamb over him, you played Corey Joseph over him. But now when it's time to trade for talent, he's the guy you throw out there. Yeah, bro. I don't get it, man. I don't. I really don't.
How do you feel about Podz? Because he was one of the people that was mentioned with the possible Lauri Markkanen trade, and they were like, reports came out that said like he's untouchable.
Yeah,
which is kind of, to me, it's crazy.
How do I say this without coming off as a hater? I'm trying to be very careful here, because there's
people,
be a hater.
People
on Twitter that think I'm a hater, right? I really like Podz. I think Podz shows a lot of promise and a lot of overall potential. I think he plays like Draymond in terms of how he can impact the game in many areas. But my biggest problem with Podz is he's not aggressive enough. He's not confident enough. This is a big season for him, because they basically say you are our guard of the future. You're untradeable. So to me, this season, his offensive load has to go up. They want him to take like 10 to 12 threes a game to try to replicate what Klay Thompson was doing. And I hope he can do that, but I just don't think he's built to take that many shots. I want him to, but I literally saw games where it's like, dude, the Suns defense is in the paint. You're wide open for a catch and shoot shot, and instead you crash to the paint and kick out. Why? Don't do the Ben Simmons thing. Just shoot the ball. I just want him to shoot the ball. We'll see. I don't know.
All right, so now you pick up Buddy Hield, Kyle Anderson, De'Anthony Melton in the offseason. What is your grade for those pickups?
Okay, Buddy Hield, love-hate relationship.
Gifted, you're going through every answer. You're like,
there's a lot of grief. It's just like a lot of.
No, listen. It's grief, right? Because I kept saying all these moves are predicated on you getting the guy for these pieces, to fit around. If that's all you have, it's not really a crazy needle mover thing to me. if we focus on Hield, right? I think Hield is a phenomenal shooter. I think his defense is pretty bad, but he can shoot the ball. So there are sets where he can run similar to Klay Thompson, right? I can see that. The problem I have with Hield is we've seen time and time again from Hield, sometimes he just doesn't really show up consistently enough. There's no reason why I should be able to watch with my own eyes playoff games where Nicholas Batum and Kyle Lowry are consistently more contributing to winning than you on the basketball floor, even when your shot's not falling, and they're old as hell. Like I don't like the feeling of that. I think he's a definition of a variance player where he can give you 25 points, pop, it be great, or be a DNP and no one's really surprised. And having him sign where his number is literally 7, that's the definition of a variance player. 7, the lucky number 7, when it's lucky. So, you know, I don't know. The other signings, I think Kyle Anderson, good defender, but it really hurts my chest that we got him because I know Curry's going to be like, oh, my God, Kyle Anderson, connective passer. Let's run Kyle Anderson, Draymond, Looney. Like I can just see Kerr complicating it, you know? So I feel iffy about it.
Yeah, to me, Kyle Anderson's someone who can just put in the Draymond role when Draymond's on the floor. Like, that's how I saw it. It's like, all right, so he can pretty much be Draymond because he can do everything Draymond does offensively, if not a little better in my mind.
Only problem is he has the slowest jump shot animation in the league.
I love it, though.
It was never like that. That's crazy. It got slower as he progressed. Like, that's
it
crazy.
did. It really did.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on DeAnthony Melton? I think that was the other signing.
That's my favorite pickup. I think he is the one player where he shows a identity of being a two-way player in some type of way where he can get downhill a little bit. He can shoot the ball, and defensively, he's not an absolute cone. I like him probably the most. I think he can fit in the most lineups of any of the other players mentioned because of that. His volume from 3 isn't like great in terms of how wide it is, but he shows you a lot of ways where he can be productive for that Philadelphia team back when he was with them. So I like him the most, to be honest.
All right. Now, you did mention Draymond Green, and there's a lot of things I can ask you. I think the most important thing, though, is like, is he going to keep his shit together this year? Like, what do you expect from him off the court, on the court? Like, is this the year he grows up?
So you're asking me. Okay. So all right. So let's wind back, right? So you're asking me if Mr. Crash Out is not going to crash out.
Has he learned his lesson?
Okay, I got to be real. I think Draymond crashed out a lot of times. I don't think there's a coincidence that he was crashing out specifically against European bigs. I'll leave it alone there. You get my point. I think that Draymond has to realize that, hey, Klay is gone. Like, Klay Thompson is gone. This is a younger team. I already punched one of my teammates in the face. Like, they were not good in games without me. A huge part of why the Warriors were 10 wasn't just because of like the roster, but Draymond being gone for so many games impacted how good they could be as well. So I think Draymond has to realize there is no more, like, I would say, safety valve or whatever. I think he needs to calm down, and I think it's doable. But again, he's just so prone to randomly crashing out. Like, why are you slapping Nurkic in the face out of nowhere?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
I don't know. I don't get it either, man.
Yeah,
I don't get it either. What do you think his role is going to be on the offense? The same thing, because I guess the bigger question is, you know, the split action, all that stuff that Kerr likes to do and that the Warriors are known for. Are you gonna have to change up a little bit? Like, Klay's gone. You know, you've had some success with the Curry pick and roll. Like, where does that leave Draymond? Where does that leave that offense in general?
I think Draymond's going to have to be more selective in terms of his own offensive game, where he's not just always trying to pass off of the DHO. I need Draymond to actually look at the basket and try to cut to the basket a bit more. Try to move up and down the floor a bit better, and also be a bit more comfortable with, you know, confidently shooting the long ball. With Klay Thompson gone, everyone has to step up their roles because the overall team spacing is going to struggle without it. And if Draymond isn't being aggressive in those spots to where he's just fine with not really having more than 3 shots a game, it's going to make the whole team suffer.
You mentioned earlier about Kuminga saying that you expect him to be maybe the second leading scorer on the team. what improvements do you want to see from him this year?
Who? Okay.
Kuminga. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. You're like, that's
Yeah.
my fault. I think said who. I think that's a.
No. I said
ooh. Yeah.
He's like a teacher in the class of his students, like that.
Yeah.
I'm just tired of this.
No, yeah. I said because I think Kuminga is the biggest X factor on the entire team. A lot of people say Podz. The reason why I say Kuminga is he's expecting big money after this year. No. So this year is a big prove year for that. But if he can figure out his shot to where it's at a respectable clip, his athleticism paired with a actual shot and handle opens up so many avenues for his game and the entire Golden State team. If he can be a capable, reliable enough shooter, we can now play him in lineups that have Draymond, that have another big in there, because the spacing won't look as bad if he can, knock down threes in the corners, right? I'm not asking for like 50% shooting, 45%, but just like 36, 35, whatever it is, but on good enough volume, I think he'll be good. Because again, athletically, I've seen him do some crazy things where he catches the ball and he dunks it, and I didn't think a dunk was coming. I thought it was going to be like a layup, a foul call. He just goes straight and dunks the basketball. So him in space with Steph, Hield, and Podz could produce some very good results, but that's the biggest area. If his offense again can take that step, I think that changes a lot about this team.
And where would that leave Andrew Wiggins?
Ooh, I got different oohs. See that? Ooh. I'm not gonna lie, man. Andrew Wiggins is so hard for me to evaluate, honestly, because if you look at his tenure as a Warrior, his best year was the contract year. And then after he got paid, it's like, all right, well, you played well initially, you get hurt, you come back, you don't look exactly the same. And then last year, I'm sorry, he was awful. Yeah. There's gonna be Wiggins guys who be like, no, Gifted, what you mean? No, his defense was not the same. Early on, he was one of the worst corner shooters in the league. For a stretch, he was averaging 11 points per game. And again, if he's not giving you the same defensive value, even his spacing is super questionable. And the amount of times he would just lose the ball off of his drives, where he would like half-heartedly attack a closeout and just lose it, it's not great because he's already not like a great passer. So if he's not doing those, aspects right, it hurts everything else. The biggest reason why we had problems scoring is because him and Klay Thompson were not consistent, guys in terms of scoring the basketball. So now Kuminga mattered a lot more because Kuminga could just, easily get to his 19 or 20 points better than Andrew Wiggins. So I'm hoping it could be a bounce back year from him. He's gone through a lot of stuff off of the court, and I'm very sympathetic to that. It's not easy for players to play through those types of things. But if we're just talking about his overall effectiveness, I don't know how he's going to look. If you told me he averages 12 points and he shoots 45% from the field and he shoots 32% from three, I'm not surprised. If you tell me he averages 16 points with much better efficiency, I'm not surprised. I don't know.
Yeah. So I have a question. Who does Moses Moody have to bribe? What does he have to do?
Go talk to Shams.
To get...
you gotta go talk to Shams. You gotta go
to get
press conference
minutes.
Look, man, I got bad news for you, man. I watched the game last year, man, and the crowd was chanting Moody. I need you to understand, for a casual audience watching a basketball game, to chant Moses Moody should play should tell you how bad this is. It just doesn't make any sense, because I've seen Kerr play anyone over him. It doesn't matter. To play Anthony Lamb for half the season over Moody, but then in the playoffs, you lean on Moody and he performs, and you don't go back to him again. It just doesn't make sense. I think Moody's good. I think he shows a ton of value for this team, but Kerr has never treated him like he's been a priority. So I don't expect him to play heavy minutes. I think he's more so like a 9th man or 10th man just because Kerr. But I think he's a valuable player.
Though? What's the reasoning behind
I don't know. I don't know.
Even
and literally
fans, don't even...
every comment from him too, right? every comment is always professional. Like, I chose to develop in the NBA. I'm fine with this, that.
Yeah.
Maybe he's just so nice that Kerr feels like taking advantage of him and trying to break him, and he's just not going. But it's not going anywhere if he doesn't want to play him.
What about the other rookie from last year, Trayce Jackson? What are your expectations to him, and is Kerr going to play him more next season also?
I like Trayce, man. I said this coming in. I thought that defensively he showed a lot of value. He was a pretty good college player, but when he got the minutes right away, he was impacting the game tremendously with his, shot blocking, his rebounding in spots, and also some of his passes were pretty solid as well. He was making some reads that, most bigs kind of struggle with. He had a very rocky road because he had moments where he wasn't playing at all. And he wasn't even in the G League some nights. He would be sitting on the bench getting no burn. And it was so aggravating because it's like, it felt like asset mismanagement. Because to me, if you want to say he's too young, fine. Let him develop in the G League. I'm okay with that. But don't tell me that he just sits there on the bench and nothing happens. He's just in the game for vibes. And then Kerr would throw him in at the most random times. Why is he in 12 games straight where he didn't play? He's coming in now in the fourth quarter versus the Phoenix Suns. Why? Like, why are you setting him up to look bad? And they'd be like, oh, see, look, I can't play him. Yeah, because you didn't work him into the game. You literally called him out of nowhere to suit up and guard Kevin Durant in spot. Like, what is this, right? I think he'll get more burn this year. And a lot of that is predicated on how bad Looney looked last year, I think. Yeah. But I can't confirm anything with Kerr. I just can't. Like, it's hard for me to know if his minutes are guaranteed or not because it took him forever to play Trayce. And there were levels to how he played guys. It was crazy, right? You would think that Trayce Jackson would play as a backup five. No. Yeah. Instead, he had a guy on our team who everyone was hunting relentlessly on defense because he was a bad defender. He's in Denver now. He had Trayce Jackson playing as a 4 alongside him. It was level ups to, okay, can Trayce get 10 minutes? No. Okay. Can he get 5 minutes? Yes. Okay. Can we get him in this spot? Yes. Like, it took us too long to get there. So I'm hoping this upcoming season, he gets a bit more tick and burn to do that because I do think he does a lot of good things. Also, our best rebounding lineups had Trayce, Draymond, and Kuminga out there. Those lineups had a lot of pop. I think that can be viable if Kuminga can take that, offensive leap, and if Trayce can actually get the minutes. I want to see that.
All right, this is going to be a big ask, big objective right here. So you mentioned how Kerr's like confused. You don't even know what Kerr's thinking. Now, if you were Kerr, if you're coaching the Warriors right now, what's your rotation and what adjustments do you make to the offense to make it run in the way that Warriors fans want it to run?
Okay. I think for me, automatically, I'm looking at Kyle Anderson as a guy that is going to be the Draymond replacement. He's not going to play many minutes with Draymond number 1. Buddy Hield off of the bench is going to be utilized like a more athletic Klay Thompson where he's younger and can run 2 spots. I think D'Anthony Melton will be used as a guard type who can be two-way alongside Steph at times as well. I think Draymond at the 5 is going to have to be a more realistic thing that they try to go to. I don't like those lineups, but at the end of the day, they're probably our most dynamic when it comes down to actually trying to close out a game because Draymond is still very good defensively. I think for Kuminga, I'm trying to involve him in as many lineups where there is shooting and pace so the floor is open for him to get downhill. I don't want to play him in any Kevon Looney lineups. I don't want to ever see that shit again. And I just want to see them be able to like give him room to figure out his game because that's really where our season lies. For Podz, I'm straight up telling Podz you have to shoot the ball. I think Podz defers a ton. So early on, if he's not taking the shots alongside Steph Curry, then Podz is going to be the backup guard to play in the non-Steph minutes to maybe provide a positive value there. Those are my like rough outlines. Also, Moody has to get a bit more burn. I would take a couple of minutes away from the bigs on the team to get him a bit more time in there. because I think he's that important. If he can like really get that going, it changes a lot for this team.
Final question. I was going to ask you if they're contenders, but just based off of your facial expressions this whole episode, that's a dumb question to ask.
Said no.
No. So instead, I'm going to ask you about just a season prediction. Realistically, where do you see them ending up? Playoffs? What seed? How far do they go?
I think the Warriors, if everything can go right for them, and by everything I mean literally everything, just every player taking leaps, Steph, rah. I think they're like a 5 seed. If everything goes right, everything. If everything goes wrong, this team is not a playing team. And I mean that. Like people have to remember last season, they almost got caught by the Rockets. They narrowly squeezed in, and they had a lot of games where Draymond didn't play. Draymond is such a missing piece to last season that I do feel like him coming back with the improvement from young players, they can have an argument to be as high as 5. But again, that's just, if you're being super optimistic. Realistically, they're probably closer to the plan where it's like 8 seed, 7 seed, 9, 10. Yeah. I'm not surprised. If you don't have this team as a playing team, I'm not surprised because that's how good the Western Conference is.
So essentially, it's like you can see anywhere between 5 and out of the playoffs, and anything above 5, you're pretty much smoking crack.
100%. That's where I'm at. 100%. Yes.
Real quick, is there, besides marketing, was there any other player that you would want them to try to target, like during the season? Because I mean, all season is essentially over now.
So initially, because I didn't think Lauri was going to be realistic, because we know Danny Ainge, he will have you sell your house, your mortgage, and your child just to get a player, right? Facts. Yeah. I didn't think he was going to be realistic. So I was saying, okay, well, what are the other players who would move a needle for this team? And I said, okay, well, if you had to evaluate the landscape, it comes down to Ingram. It would come down to, I would say, Zach LaVine, and then Paul George. Paul George wasn't able to happen. That sucked or whatever. But the fact that they could have traded Chris Paul's salary to get LaVine, and they didn't want to do that, and they just allowed Chris Paul to walk, to me, it shows where they are. They want to be a team that's no longer in the tax. They're tired of paying the tax year after year after year, which is why it put more pressure on them to make the Lauri marketing deal happen. Because now your only options in season are BI, who wants to get paid a lot of money, who I don't think is a great fit to how the Warriors play basketball, who is also a injury-prone player, or Zach LaVine, who at his best, I think is a much better player than people are giving him credit for, but is still a guy who is also injury-prone based on how many games he missed last year, can be a productive player, but at the end of the day, he's still a guard. He's not like a wing, versatile defender type. So you're still kind of in the same situation. So I really don't know if the move is out there to be a needle mover for them mid-season, but it all depends on how they're looking, I would say.
All right. Well, Gifted Hoops, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Talking Golden State Warriors. Congratulations on all your success, man. It's really dope to see you coming from like hoop spaces to like where you are now, man. Just keep going, man. Keep grinding.
Hey, man, you know what, man? We was back in there grinding back then, and you gave me like a whole lot of tips. I took that blueprint, and we just keep going, like season after season after season.
Keep pumping out content, man. You got the personality for it. You got the work ethic. So there's no doubt in my mind you can be whatever you want to be. Dead ass. So keep doing that. Sure. Listen, if you want to follow Dime, you can on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads at the Dime NBA. I'm Josh Rodriguez at Josh_Rodriguez_. He's Kwab at Kwab AKS. He's Gifted at GiftedHoops_, correct?
Yes. You can find me on Twitter at GiftedHoops_. Everywhere else, playback, YouTube, Twitch, Gifted Hoops.
All right, there you go. Tune in next week for another episode of The Dime.